In this video, I'm gonna let you know all about the process behind the creation of my French horn and trumpet covers. Once I've chosen which piece I would like to cover, which by the way can either be something that I've always wanted to play or something that I've just heard in a movie, or one of your requests actually, since I always read all of them. So once I have this piece, I listen to it to figure out what would be interesting for me to play on both instruments. Obviously, I will pretty much always play the original horn and trumpet parts as they were written, but sometimes they do not play all the time. So what I like to do is I will fill the gaps, so to speak, with parts from other instruments of the orchestra. I will usually play the high-pitched stuff on the trumpet, so that could be something from the violin parts, like a melody, or flutes, oboes, and the horns can play the violas, cellos, trombones, or bassoons, for example, since they can cover a good part of their range. For example, in this cover of the Rafiki Q from The Lion King, I hear this gorgeous melody that we all know, played by the violins and the choir, so I will naturally play the top line with the trumpet and the horns will play the harmonies. Oh, and now let's listen to what the cellos do during this part. It's actually quite subtle, but it's very interesting, so I decided to give it to the horns and bring it up in the mix. This reminds me of Take Her to Sea from Titanic, in which I did pretty much the same thing. Here I'm actually adding more harmonies than there are in the original piece, which is something I love to do. At times, I've also added solos that weren't there, like in this piece from Jurassic World. You're now listening to the original piece, and as you can hear, there's no solos, it's just chords. And there's a good reason for that. During that part in the movie, there was a lot of dialogues on top, so the music needed to be simple and a bit subdued. But since I do not have to care about the dialogues, I thought it would be nice to add the melody. Here's a few other covers in which I composed or improvised a solo. Back to Rafiki, trumpet is playing the violin part here. And now I'm playing the original brass parts, which in my version are now, well, of course, way higher in the mix than in the original. Once I know which instrument is going to play what, it's time to write the notes down. First thing I will do is I will create a tempo map of the piece, which means going through the whole track and figuring out all of the time signatures and tempo changes. This can take me 5 minutes if, for example, we have a slow piece in 4/4 with a steady tempo, and much more time when I'm working on say, an action cue with 40 time sig changes and a tempo that is constantly evolving. On this specific piece, you can see that the tempo moves a little bit from bar to bar. From this, I can tell that this cue was recorded without a click. Otherwise, we would see something like this. Then I will open this tempo map within my notation software, and then it's time to write the notes down. Sometimes I have like a full score or even piano sheet music of the piece, which makes things easier, but in a lot of cases I had to transcribe everything by ear. So I will listen to every bar one by one once again to pick up all the notes and write them down. Once that is all done, it's time to record. I will usually record the horns first. Most of the time I do a 4-horn section and then proceed with a 3 trumpet section. Of course, there can be much more or less, like a 6-horn, 8-horn section, 4 trumpets. It all depends on what I think the piece needs. I then mix it on top of the original track or over a track that I recreated using virtual instruments. So what is mixing? Well, first of all, it is about adjusting the volume levels of all of the tracks. On a specific part, maybe you will want more horn, and then you might need less trumpet, so you can adjust all of that. There is also panning and EQing. Panning is when you place a track in the stereo field. So basically, since the horns are on the left side of the orchestra, you will want your horn tracks to be on the left side, as you can see here. And then the same goes for the trumpets, which, as you guessed, will be more on the right side. EQing is about working on the frequencies. If you want something to stand out more in the mix, you can, of course, play with the volume like we saw, but you can also boost specific frequencies, or in the contrary, if something is standing out too much, you can tone it down using EQ. Trumpet notes in the high range, for example, they can sometimes produce very shrill harmonics that can be quite unpleasant to the ear. Once you've identified the frequencies that correspond to these harmonics, you just basically tell the program to cut them off every time they appear. Last but not least, I will add reverb to the whole thing to make it sound even better. Once mixing is done, then it's time to do the video. So I will export the sheet music as images, which I will join to create one huge image, as you can see here. It can either be vertical or horizontal, depending on which video presentation I choose. And then it's all about animating that big image within my video editing software, so that it scrolls in sync with the music. You can use these keyframes to do this. It's actually not really hard to do, just maybe a bit tedious when there are a lot of tempo changes, for example. Then I add the stuff that I filmed, the movie scenes, the final audio mix, and voila!